Welcome, everybody, to the Conference on Business and Ethics podcast. My name is Rand Sperry. I am CEO of Sperry Commercial and Sperry Global Affiliates, a national real estate company. And my co-host today is Randy Redwitz, the CEO of Redwitz & Company, a CPA firm here in Orange County. And we have as our special guest today, Father Spitzer. Father Spitzer is a Jesuit priest. He is a philosopher, an educator, a speaker, and he is the former president of Gonzaga University. And for those of you that probably don't know this, I didn't know it myself, he was born in Honolulu. I guess I would have never guessed that. So welcome, Father Spitzer. I'll kick it off with our first question. And you are also the CEO of the Magis Center of Reason and Faith and the president and CEO of the Napa Institute. And so I'd like to ask you a little bit about what advice do you have for, what is it that they do? Let's start there with the talk about them. There are two different types of religious institutions. If you could talk just briefly about both of them. And so our listeners can be more knowledgeable of what you're sharing right now.
Sure. The Magis Center really works to develop materials and also programs that are going to help middle school students, high school students, and university students especially to get over that hump where they believe that faith and science are contradictory. So we give a lot of evidence for God from the Board of Lincoln and Guth proof or entropy evidence, also from fine-tuning coincidences, things of that nature. We talk about the evidence for the soul that can survive bodily death from peer-reviewed medical studies of near-death experiences and terminal lucidity. We look even at the scientific examination of the Shroud of Turin or the scientific examination of miracles. But it's mostly taking a look at a lot of scientific and philosophical evidence for God, the soul, Jesus, even the church, and trying to get those kids over the hump. We make a group of modules. We educate master teachers and other teachers for dioceses all over the United States. So we're right now in about 97 dioceses out of 192 throughout the United States. In both middle schools, high schools, and also faith formation programs. So that's the Magis Center, and you can take a look at that at magiscenter.com or crediblecatholic.com, where you can actually look at the modules. Everything is free of charge. You can download them, whatever. The second institute is the Napa Institute, and the Napa Institute really tries to form Catholic leaders, not just form them, but really to bring about an intersection with various Catholic leaders throughout the United States. But also we get international Catholic leaders who come to the conferences. We meet once a year up in Napa, California, except for this year because of the COVID-19 crisis. But normally at Napa, California, we have about 700 participants that come there. We have speakers, really truly excellent speakers in both the Catholic theological area, in the leadership area, culture area. And we try to put together a whole list of seminars, activities they can do, but especially occasions for them to interact, interrelate, and to bring those contacts back to their places where they can really reinforce each other in their leadership. We also run another conference in New York City once a year. Again, this is the only year where it'll be virtual again. And we've been virtual for both the Napa conference, and we'll also be virtual for the New York conference, which is really about business per se. So we're looking at, it's called Principled Entrepreneurship. And we really do focus on those questions and a lot more questions concerned with capitalism and how to apply this and apply ethics, much like we're doing right here to our everyday lives and situations, but also to looking at policy issues concerned with the government, et cetera, and how that intersects with our Catholic world and our Catholic leadership. So those are the two basic ones. Napa also funds a lot of pilgrimages, things of that nature, but the two conferences in Napa and New York are big apostolates.
You know,
Well,
Father, I was driving home the other night and I was listening to the Catholic channel, and there was a Broken Halo show with
Yeah,
Father Dave Dwyer,
right.
and you were being interviewed there in the Tower of Hope,
Yeah,
and you expounded on a question that had been asked about, or a comment by I think it was by an Uber driver that was clearly not maybe not Christian at all, but not Catholic, and he said, "I think the life of Jesus was just a fairy tale." And you expounded on all the authoritative evidence proving the existence of Jesus and his works and all of that. I was mesmerized. It was unbelievably fascinating.
oh, great. Well, I'm grateful. That's exactly what the Maggia Center does.
Right.
And so Incredible Catholic does. And we do it not only for, like radio shows and things, but definitely we make these voiceover PowerPoint modules, video modules, so that teachers can just play it in the class. A lot of religion teachers don't know any science, and their philosophy training is a little bit limited. So we are trying to definitely make it so that they can just play these things for the students, and then we answer a lot of questions, do all those sorts of things, right down to the specific questions of evolution, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, Randy, for
Well,
mentioning that.
you're absolutely just incredibly wonderful to listen to there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's so important for our children, because what are the statistics on atheists? It's a growing number of atheists.
Oh, yeah.
Starting.
Yeah,
And
42, according to the Pew survey for 2016 and 2018, 42% of our kids who are going to church right now in high school have already made a decision or are about to make a decision. The median age is 13, where they make the decision that they're going to become not just a non-Catholic, they're going to become an unbeliever, because they don't believe that faith and science can possibly be compatible. Science is truth, therefore faith must be false, and off they go. And they're also scared of being outed, by their, fellow students for being a believer. But if they don't have any evidence to give them to the contrary, they get scared of being outed, and they sort of, abandon the faith. So that's what we're dealing with. But getting them this solid bank of evidence is truly important. And that's what we do. We give them just a huge range of really solid scientific, philosophical, historical, and exegetical evidence that frankly blows them away. 94% of them say, it had a very positive impact on me for maintaining my faith and defending it. So
your work is very important for what you're doing for the youth. Just amazing. And I've heard you as well, and I was mesmerized as well. So, Randy, I'll leave it over to you. I know you got a question you're dying to ask Dr. Spitzer.
Father, what is your advice to business owners and managers who are struggling today with how to balance ethics and employee retainment and stability in their businesses? And Rand and I lived through this. I mean, this is a very live question for Rand and I, because we both carry a lot of employees, and fortunately we've been able to keep those employees on board, but there's a lot of ethics involved there in that process.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is we all have to deal with the hard numbers, and so when we reconcile and take a hard look at that, I think we all have to make up in our minds. First of all, what kind of a sacrifice can we make to try to maintain our employees? I mean, just here at Magis, I'm not on the same level of you with all the employees, but we have really tried to maintain our employees, to just keep them on board, to keep our operations running, to keep these programs developing. And so most of the time, as long as we can raise the money, and some of our benefactors have really had to cut back because of the crisis, but we've really made an effort. So I would just say to me, it's worth the sacrifice. But you have to really make a concerted effort, sit down with your team and say, what can we really afford? But let's make the sacrifice where we can, and help our employees out. I think that's a very Catholic, ethical thing to do. But if you can't, you can't. You know, the old silver rule: avoid unnecessary harm. But if a harm is unavoidable, minimize it. And so, you know, if we do have to do some layoffs, okay, we have to. The hard numbers are going to require it. But if we can maintain and make the sacrifice and maybe run on some fumes for a while and try to get this done for the sake of our employees, I'd say that's a really great thing to do. Are we required to do it? No, we're not required to do it, but it's very much Christ-like. It's very consistent with what I think he would do to try and take care of folks who have, you know, been good to us and who we can try to, you know, maintain and keep alive. I mean, the second thing, of course, is what are the budgetary things that we can sacrifice before we need to take the employees start, you know, furloughing or doing something of that nature. And thirdly, if we have to furlough, you know, amidst all of these things, you know, let's do the furlough. Let's not, you know, let them go permanently. Finally, are, you know, the employees willing to come to the table and make some sacrifices themselves temporarily, you know, so that we, you know, can keep on, you know, our full load, you know, even with the sacrifice. So just ask, you know, for co-responsibility and the sharing of sacrifices. And I think all these things are really compatible with our Christian faith and Christian ethics. It goes beyond the call of duty. It goes beyond the silver rule. It really goes to the golden rule, you know, doing the good for others that we would want done to us, not simply avoiding harm to others that we don't want done to us. That's the silver rule.
I think too that when you share your concerns with the employee base and let them participate in it, you know, it everybody feels like there's fairness and yes, hopefully people perceive it as a Christ-like move, but at least they participate in it and understand it. And I think clarity of understanding is so valuable in those very difficult circumstances.
Absolutely. And I would just say, sharing the, you know, the information and asking them to participate in the sacrifice, which I call co-responsibility, they do rise to the occasion. It's really remarkable how much they do.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I could tell you, we have 1,300 tenants, and we've been in conversations as a team, not me personally, but I get the feedback, and it is amazing that how hard the employers, and these are small to large business owners, how they're working as hard as they can to keep their employees on and to, as you mentioned, furlough versus lay off their employees. Your answer was really one of the best I've heard, Father Spitzer, in terms of how to deal with this situation. So I think our listeners very much appreciate what you've had to say there. And it shows leadership. And you do have a book out called The Spirit of Leadership. And how does that book, how would it be relevant to this audience that's listening today?
You've got the book right here. Let's see.
Yeah. It's The Spirit of Leadership is, you know, one of my very first books that I wrote. I was, you know, in the midst of Gonzaga University there, and you know, as a president at the university at the time. But the objective of the book was basically to tell people, don't forget the intangibles. Sometimes, you know, in the 3 Ps that we have to deal with, you know, product and process and people, we really concentrate on product because we know that if we just don't have good product design, or we've got a lot of waste in product production, et cetera, it's, you know, it's very easy to get into the mode, of course, of correcting that and getting it done. And we should, there's no question about that. And then process, again, you know, we want to eliminate waste. We also want to eliminate, you know, product defects. We want to improve our processes. We want to get streamlined, you know, processes that don't have needless layers and layers and so forth. And so again, we should do these things. We can pretty much look at them very concretely, because they are very tangible. We can put them, put it out on big spreadsheets, what's going on, where we can improve, consult the engineers or whatever the case may be. Those things are just so in the forefront of our minds that we forget that third P, which is people. And, people are kind of intangible. They're employees. But the objective of the book was to try and say, you got to wedge in this really intangible area. And it's intangible because people, they just don't correspond to a linear system. I mean, they can do anything. They can have moods, they can have, all kinds of strange decision parameters, et cetera. And you sort of look at that and you sort of forget that people get tired, they get fatigued, they have morale challenges, they need to be inspired. And so there's all these intangible qualities that just have to be brought to the fore. And I think sometimes, if you're quantitative, and I started off as a quantitative guy, and of course, Randy, you're definitely a quantitative guy sitting there in the CPA, you look at that and you just go, yeah, there it is. There's the accounting cost. But my plea is for people to really think about the people parameters, because if you invest in your people, if you give them leeway, if you treat them the right way, and I've got these commitments that I talk about, how do you treat people, and what are some of the commitments we can make to our people, and especially just in the minds of, of ourselves as leaders, when all these things are going on, how do we just keep our people in play? And how do we treat them the right way? How do we bring them into decision maker? How do we make them truly a co-responsible partner with us in the decisions where they can be involved? And how, do we take on what I call that stakeholder approach rather than just, the stockholder approach to things, where we're really trying to include them, in our decision making. And that's where the whole area of ethics comes in, because I can tell you so many, obviously this group of people who are listening right now, I'm preaching to the choir. I know that ethics is already on the forefront of their mind, or else they wouldn't be listening to this. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of ways, ethics is, the redheaded stepchild sometimes, that's thrown out because, ethics is soft, it really is not a true business parameter, but it is. And, the ethics of, just our human relations with our employees, but also just ethics itself, like doing the right thing and having that inspirational leadership from the top, is trying to do the right thing and inspired to do the right thing, makes a huge difference to employee morale, and not, just treating things like, okay, let me look at the case precedent and get as close to the bloody edge as I can, and then, I'll refrain from going over it. But sometimes if you get that close to the edge, you do fall over it. Yeah. And so what I try to do is say, okay, we've got these intangibles out here. We've got these ethical commitments. We've got these people commitments, right, that we need to make, very concertedly. We want to try and bring a stakeholder position into our businesses where we can be, including people and, where they can participate in decision making, where they can do this. All these kinds of things are part of that, my philosophy of business and leadership there, which I think is truly important because, like I said, it's really easy just to go for the product and the process, forget the people, and then you pay the price, right? Because if you forget the people, what do you get? Morale problems. What do you get? Employee turnover problems, all of which, by the way, are very expensive. What else do you get? You get transactional, problems where you have to create layers of bureaucracy to oversee the overseers, to oversee the overseers, et cetera, et cetera. So you get, these kinds of, transactional problems. And furthermore, you get a variety of other problems where people just won't contribute to the team. They won't give anything. They go into passive aggressive mode, right? So you ask them to do anything, goes to the bottom of the pile because they resent you secretly, for whatever they are resenting you for. But if we can just alleviate some of these things, it's so easy to move from just, not just being what I would call an accounting cost analysis. We can actually do an opportunity cost analysis. We can really look at, okay, if we bring our employees maximally on board, Will they contribute information to us more readily? Will they act as a team with us more readily? Will they, not only offer information, but will they offer information to their colleagues and share that information on the team so that we can have a real interactive team? Will they be looking at our market share and where can we improve it and start making self-motivated changes to trying to increase that market share? And there's a couple of really great articles that were in the Harvard Business Review that talked about this phenomenon called culture. And why is it that companies that have really good, what I would call people-ethical cultures, why do those cultures always seem to get the best resolution to opportunity cost? Why do they get the increased market share? Why is it that they increase in profitability, et cetera? And so I can share that with listeners by sending you a couple of links out there to those articles, which I think are fascinating indeed. But the results would be shocking to people who really don't think about culture and people and ethics very much, but they think more about product process in isolation. If you do bring those three intangibles into the fore, it's amazing how it really is transformative to competitiveness, market share, and reducing the cost of lost opportunity, et cetera.
I think that there's and I think this has been seen in time and time again, but when you engage the employees, not only do they have a sense of participation, but they come up with some pretty darn good ideas that could really facilitate the business, that improves profitability, improves process, and something that you would have never thought of yourself, and yet they're in the trenches working with it and can see a better solution than you can see. So I mean, there's just all kinds of rich rewards there for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I look at our company and growing it from 3 people to a national real estate company, and how well the platform works and how things, work so well together. And I'm thinking, that's not me. That's not the guy who graduated from Cal State Long Beach. Let me tell you, it's coordinated by some brilliant people we have working for the organization and their input and creativity. And we just let them loose. It's just wonderful, and I've seen that in so many other companies as well.
Really, truly, that's so true.
That was very good.
Rand, I wasn't going to say anything, but a lot of people have said to me, how did Rand get to where he is? Anyway.
I know I was going to hear it.
Just remember, I didn't say that.
I got his name down. I wrote it down. All right, we have time for one more question. Randy, you want to?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Father, this question has kind of rolled through my mind over this period of pandemic, and I suppose you can take it in all different kinds of directions, but I wonder if the pandemic has brought people closer to God, has caused people to pray more, to become become closer to God. I don't know any other way to put it than that. In my own mind, we're striving for solutions in this race for a vaccine, and yet God's got all the knowledge everywhere, any place, anytime. And do we ask? Do we seek help, or is it? Are we so self-reliant that we don't turn and ask God for that help? I don't know. Have you seen any of that change during this time of crisis?
Yeah, I have. And to the extent where people are really affected deeply, in other words, maybe their jobs have been threatened, or maybe, permanent loss of job is there, or maybe, their kids are just having a really difficult time with the home learning environment, or whatever it may be, where there's really something going on that's kind of deep, and the psychological state of the elderly person in the household, and you're worried about them, and because they're at home all the time, et cetera. All these things have, I think, led a lot of people to start praying out of sheer need. But there's a second thing I see also that's happening, and that is that people have more quiet time. All the regular distractions of, where we might have had evening entertainment or whatever it may have been. People, they get tired of the television, they get tired of, the radio, and they might actually have some quiet time where that reflection time actually turns into prayer time. And so that's been a really good effect too of the pandemic. We still have to determine, being in California here, we've been cut off, from really having a lot of church services until very recently. We're doing them outside,
Right.
But for a long while there, that just wasn't happening inside or on regular basis, and we still have the phenomenon where people are just deathly afraid of coming to a mass, getting infected. And I mean, whatever people say, if we wanted to get the message across that you should be deathly afraid, they certainly have done that well. And I'm not altogether sure that was probably the correct message to have, or the way to phrase it, but that's the way it has come across. And now, you've got this huge risk-averse population that's just really not availing themselves of the sacraments. How that will affect things going forward is very difficult to say. So we don't know just how many people are going to stay away from Mass, but it would be just a pity if they did. Thirdly, though, Catholic schools, oddly enough, the ones that are coming back online now, the K through 6s that have gotten the waivers in California, for example, many of them, most of them, are getting a whole new slug of new students. And the reason is because the publics are not going back.
Right.
And so a lot of people are calling. I mean, I've heard from principals and presidents, we're getting calls, day and night to try and get their kids into the private schools, and they may well stay. And that could be a real boon of our Catholic school system.
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought?
I never would have thought of that aspect of it, but yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I know we were pretty excited because here in Chicago, you can go inside the church. We went to Holy Name Cathedral this last Sunday, and I'll tell you, they were as organized as I've ever seen. They had everyone waiting out in front with 6 feet, and then you go in and you had to have a reservation, and a lady stood there checking your name off. I felt like I was going into a restaurant. And then the usher takes you and shows you exactly where you're going to sit. And you couldn't feel more safe. I mean, because everyone was very distanced, and it was just great. It was full to the extent they could allow it. And it was just exciting to be back in the church for the first time since March for us.
It's time.
We had outdoor at home, but to be actually in a beautiful cathedral like that, you take it for granted. So it was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, on the Magis site there, I've got all the information on the various vaccinations that are coming out, what their process is and so forth, and where they are. So there's quite a few coming. I would say that there's going to be 2 or 3 vaccinations, both non-embryonic and embryonic, coming out in November. It looks pretty likely, the very latest in early December. So there's all things going well, but just keep praying, as you said there, Randy and Rand. Just keep praying that it really does, things go forward. But people are already, 300, 400, 500 million vaccinations are already in process by these various companies. And they're taking a risk because they're just finishing up phase 2 clinical trials. But so far, everything looks really pretty good.
Yeah,
there was a news article as I was driving into the office earlier this afternoon about how are they going to deliver this vaccine to 300 million people? Some of it's very, very difficult. They were saying some of the some of the potential vaccine has to be stored in a deep, deep cold container or something. I don't know. I didn't follow it all, but
Yeah. That's right, because it's a live virus vaccination, but I'm sure they're going to stratify it according to age and pre-existing conditions.
right.
So the first set that are going to get it are those that really do have the serious pre-existing conditions. Then the next set are going to get it is the over 80, then the over 70, et cetera. Then the less significant pre-existing conditions, et cetera. So they'll have a protocol for administration of it. And you really can keep these things adequately cold, and you can have a central system for freezing it, and then during the day you can have liquid hydrogen or liquid nitrogen containers that can really keep this stuff very, very cold indeed.
Right.
As they say, it's a good problem to have. So I hope we have some food. We are just up on our 30 minutes. This has been a very, very interesting conversation.
So much so far.
Yeah, and so I want to thank Father Robert Spitzer. That's who you've been listening to today, and just want to let you know that he was also a former recipient of the Farmers and Merchant Lifetime Achievement Award at the Business and Ethics Conference several years back. And you can certainly see why he made such an impact on so many people in his daily life. And we thank you for everything you've done for so many throughout your lifetime, Father Spitzer. And we thank you for being on this call. And we want to remind everyone that with God willing, there will be a Business and Ethics Conference next year. We're looking at sometime between April and May, and the venue to be determined. And we want to thank everyone for listening today. Have a blessed day and week. Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Blessings to both of you. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Great to be with you.